And we're back, ladies and gentlemen, live on the Philippe Matthews Show after hours, because the topic that we're going to be talking about is an after hours topic. However, it is a topic that we can all relate to, and we should all relate to. Antonia Hall is our special guest. She's an award-winning, best-selling author of The Ultimate Guide to a Multi-Orgasmic Life. She is a self-improvement expert, spiritual teacher, an artist, and a blogger. She's committed to helping people bring more pleasure into their lives, and is known as an inspirational catalyst for positive living. Antonia Hall, welcome.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
I always wanted to your name is so close to Arsenio. I want to call you Arsenio Hall, but that's just, you look nothing like him. I just want to tell you that. Talk to me about this book, The Ultimate Guide to a Multi-Orgasmic Life. What caused you to wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm going to write about this? Because this book, ladies and gentlemen, is absolutely awesome. And the reason it's so awesome is because she has put in here some of the greatest spiritual science and sexuality information together that I have seen in a long time. So this kind of suggests that you have been living this practice for some time and then just decided to write about it. How did this all come about for you?
Thank you so much for the kind words. I was implementing a lot of these tools into my life, and I saw how transformative they were. So when I went to grad school, I knew that I wanted to study how sexuality, one, had been liberated, because we live with a lot of oppression, and it's out there everywhere, and yet we're not allowed to express our inherent sexuality, and it's a part of the fabric of all of humanity. So I knew that it was something that I felt very compelled to work with, and I knew that these tools were just so potent and life-changing. So that's where my focus was. That's why I wanted to write this book, to give that information to people and say, did you know that we can all be multi-orgasmic? Did you know that your body is wired for this immense pleasure, and that it will ripple over into every area of your life to create that creative, juicy, what I call a multi-orgasmic life?
When you talk about sexual energy being a potent source that we can tap into, what do you mean by that in terms of a multi-orgasmic lifestyle? How do you tap into it? Obviously, you can't have a multiple orgasm literally all through the. Some people probably would. I would probably assume they would love that. But how do you have that, and how do you define that?
I define it as coming from a place where you're experiencing pleasure in what has become mundane. So whether it's getting in the shower and not having your mind be racing to the meeting that you have, or the dinner that upset you the night prior. It's being in that moment and enjoying the pleasure of the water touching your skin, and finding pleasure. Pleasure can be derived in our lives all the time. And the more that we're moving that potent energy through the body, the more you feel juicy and creative, because that's what that energy is. It's a potent life force energy that the body wants to have move through it. That's how we're wired, but we're not given the tools to do this in the West anyway. It's a very new thing. So
is this something that I would assume some people would I don't know, look at this as taboo, or are you supposed to bring sexual energy and sexual thoughts into your everyday life? And I don't know if you're talking about, I mean, I know what you're talking about, but for the sake of the people that are listening and watching, are you bringing in sexual thoughts and energy throughout the day, or are you just bringing in that prana, that chi, as it's called, that is the life force that resonates in us? And for those who are a little squeamish about that, because they want to keep it somewhat sacred and not necessarily secular, but it really is one and the same.
It is one and the same. I think that's a wonderful question, by the way. So it's not so much about thinking sexual thoughts throughout the day as tapping into your own body and that energy source and just bringing awareness to it. I like to do energy work in the morning before I start my day and move that energy through the body. And then I just feel fueled. I feel charged up. And it's, of course, because it's part of creation of everything that we're a part of, that energy is creative and it's juicy and it wants to like find the fun in life, that pleasurable point throughout anything that we're doing in life, whether it's the way that we eat or trusting in being in the moment with the interactions of those around us. We're starting to lose touch with that. We're on our phones a lot. Electronics were supposed to help give us more time. But most of us are finding that we have less time than ever. So it's coming back into the moment, and the more that you're moving that energy, the more you can just stop and tap into it really, really easily. And it's just your own potent source. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So now I know you talk about Tantra in the book, and talk to for people who are still new to that, to Tantra and Tantra sex. Talk to us about Tantra orgasm and how that translates and reverberates throughout your body as well as throughout your life, and you take that energy into your daily life.
Mm-hmm. So Tantra is 5,000-year-old traditions. The texts taught not just how we can tap into our body to have multiple orgasms for both men and women and full body orgasms. It talked about the way of life that we can incorporate, the foods that we eat to feel good, the mindset which can get in the way of sexuality. Sexuality is more between the ears than any other place. So our own mindset, whether it's the messages that we were given growing up, any of that, and that was all addressed, looking at knowing yourself, knowing what is going on in your mind around your interactions with others, both sexually and throughout life.
Mm-hmm.
And the more that you're incorporating those tools, the more it fuels your life. Now, it also gives amazing tools on how to be multi-orgasmic and have these mind-bending full-body orgasms just from doing energy and breath work alone, let alone in the bedroom.
Mm-hmm. Now, is this something you practice with your partner, or is this something you can practice by yourself?
You can do either. And now, Tantra definitely is a path that can be incorporated for two people of any gender orientation.
Mm-hmm.
And coming together at that level, seeing each other, seeing the god and goddess within each other and connecting at that level, it's very deep and it's incredibly healing. It's incredibly pleasurable. And it's also an incredible gateway for transcendence.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And again, these are things that the language normally you think is separate when you don't necessarily equate orgasm with transcendence. But what's fascinating is this, and when we look at, I remember having a conversation years ago with Deepak Chopra about this. When we talk about transcendence, he says, engage in whatever it is that moves you toward transcendence. And a recent friend of mine, Carlton Brown, who does ritual meditation, and he's gone all over the world finding pyramids and these sacred sites, and found how there are certain elixirs and plants and shrubbery and things that are used to create transcendence. And as you said, the 5,000-year-old Tantra is a part of transcendence. And we found that the same parts of the brain light up during sex, as well as transcendence or spiritual ascension, which I think is absolutely fascinating. But we try to separate the two.
Mm-hmm.
And in a sense, we live a bipolar, unfulfilled, fragmented life. Talk to us about the melding between sexuality, multi-orgasmic life, and spirituality and spiritual science.
As you touched on, we are sacred spiritual vessels, and it's sexual sacred vessels. Like, we're able to move that energy and experience these incredible transcendent experiences. And again, it's moving that energy up the spine and throughout the body. We have a circuitry in our body, and the more we move that potent energy up and through the body, the more it allows for those transcendent experiences.
You also talk about in the book, and you use, again, I love the oxymoronic aspects of this book, which is what I want to bring out for people where I think they should get this, is you talk about gratitude and forgiveness work. You also talk about heart intelligence. So those, again, are things that you don't necessarily equate with sexual energy. Connect the dots for us.
There are a lot of things that get in the way of our living our best life. And part of living our best life is moving that energy through. And if we've grown up with messages that sexuality is shameful, that our bodies are sin, or whatever it could be that we've heard, that we've incorporated, if we've had relationships that have left us feeling damaged and wounded, then we shut down. And when you're shut down, you're probably restricting your breath. It's a way to not have to feel the pain, but that also means that we're limiting the pleasure in not just in the bedroom, but every area of our lives. Mm-hmm. So the more that you work with forgiving and making peace with the past and looking at the messages that could be getting in the way, the more that you're going to find that you are able to bring that pleasure back into your life. And breath work is a huge key to that, because we've become very shallow breathers. Again, mm-hmm. Part of being so busy, and we're hunched over things, whether it's the laptop or the phone or whatever. And it restricts the amount of oxygen that we can get, which means that our cells aren't getting the oxygen it needs. And we're also not releasing the carbon dioxide. So just bringing more into your body, it helps relax you. We all know, like, if we're stressed out and we're angry and we stop and we do deep breaths, mm-hmm. that it helps to center and kind of like, okay, wait a minute. We can also use short, quick breaths to bring a bunch of energy into the body. So it can calm you down, it can energize you. And there are a lot of tools like that wouldn't necessarily be something you would equate with sex and mm-hmm. orgasm. And like, how is this going to make me multi-orgasmic? The more you're getting all those little blocks out of the way, the more you're primed and ready for that ripeness of pleasure throughout your whole body.
So is this something that when they pick up the book and they open it, they're going to, because I assume some people are going to say, I want to improve my sex life. Some people might say, I want a sex life. And is it going to be immediate results, or is it something that takes time to build? And if so, what does that timeline look like?
Every person is different, and it depends on a myriad of factors around sexuality, especially because you may have grown up with a lot of discomfort around sexuality. You didn't really feel comfortable getting to know your own body. And so there are a lot of people that haven't even experienced orgasm ever in their life. And so it's going to take a little more time to get through those different factors of forgiveness work and looking at where you might have been told this wasn't okay, and then realizing this is an inherent part of who we all are. It's a natural It's as much so as the air we breathe, the food we eat, the water we drink. Our body needs to express our sexuality. That's part of being human.
Mm-hmm.
And we see it everywhere, right? And that we're not supposed to express it. So you have more of that to get through. It might take a little longer, but who knows? You can have a breakthrough overnight.
Mm-hmm.
So the timeline, I usually find that women can be multi-orgasmic within a few months, and men can learn to be multi-orgasmic anywhere from a few months to like 6 months at the most.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And it, of course, it depends on how much you're incorporating the different tools into your life.
How did it manifest for you? How has the old Antonia Hall, before being multi-orgasmic, who was she then versus who is she now, and how has that journey of multi-orgasmic sexuality been for you?
It's created this surrendered, trusting, loving place with the universe at large. I understand my place in the world more, and I trust life, and so I'm able to surrender moment by moment, day by day, whatever is thrown at me. I find a peace that I didn't have before. I'm ever in awe of the immense amount of pleasure the body is wired for. I never would have believed that our bodies were capable of having that much pleasure.
Mm-hmm.
And so the more that I've cultivated those tools and used them and brought that into my life, the more it's like, it's just mind-bending. It's awe-inspiring that our bodies can just run energy through and have full body orgasms just from breath and energy work alone. So,
And I think that's amazing for a lot of people to comprehend until they have tried it or have successfully done it. Can you define or differentiate between a full body orgasm and multi-orgasm?
So multiple orgasms is having a succession of orgasms, which is a release of energy that is often quite pleasurable. And full body orgasms, I'll say for men often equate orgasm and ejaculation as one function. There are two. So once a man learns to find that point by looking at his pleasure cycles and kind of learning to cool that energy and bring it up into his body, then that orgasm, instead of expelling outward, is brought up into the body, and it allows for this incredible orgasm, and then he can keep going until he wants to ejaculate or not.
Well, I think for most men hearing that is hot, right? Because most men say after ejaculation, that's it, I'm done. And then they're not erect anymore, and they have to wait again, wait a minute, won't. And what we're looking at when we understand energy and Tantra, and that is that the energy never ends.
Right. And instead of expelling that energy outward, and then often there's a decline in energy, instead you're bringing that energy into your own body, so it's charging you, it's fueling you. And that's the same thing with women. The more that you're moving that energy through, the more it's fueling you and charging you. And many of us have had experiences where we have a really hot evening with someone, and the next day we're just like in the flow, and we're feeling more
singing and humming our favorite tune.
Time.
That is a fact.
Time.
Yeah.
You get to be in the flow, and you're feeling juicy and creative, and you got that smile, and you're kind of lit up from inside, and people are like, there's that.
And, yeah, there's never been a moment where people say, oh, you've gotten some last night, didn't you? Yep, I did. Yes, I did. I sure did. Yep, tore it up. Yep, smashed it. Yep. Talk to me about, and then we talked about Tantra, but you also mentioned the Tao in there, and you have a subchapter in there called Tantra and the Tao. Talk to us about that.
So Tantra and the Tao are similar practices. It was just where it's just a regional difference. So Tantra was more of the Eastern, like India area. And the more we're looking back, the more that there are ties to the goddess worship, and that this was just something that it has actually been from Upper Paleolithic to present day. You know, like it's just been held secret because of the shift that happened that said, oh no, if you want to worship, you need to go into, and it started creating these religious structures that we have. And it kind of said that sexuality and the body and all these practices that were used, oh no, that's shameful. You should be doing that. So they wrote it down and they kept it secret. And when it moved to China and such, it became the Taoist philosophies. But there's a lot of similar practices still. It's just been changed because of the region and the differences there.
I love the fact that you've done the homework and the history of this, because it's you really went back and kind of looked at this and showed, you know, I think the people who are going to struggle the most are the people who are really into their religiosity and you know, are hardcore into their faith. And if you don't have any wiggle room, if you don't give yourself any wiggle room, you don't keep an open mind, this probably is going to be challenging for you. It'll work still if you do the work. Right. But it will be challenging, I would think, in the beginning, because you have to break free from those external religious constructs.
And I think it's always important, regardless of where something came from. If you have a belief system, it's really good to continually check in and say, okay, well, who's saying that? And is this what I really believe? Or was this something that I've just been told so many times I've adopted it as my own?
Sure.
And I think that that's just a healthy part of living a healthy lifestyle, is to constantly question our own mindset. Those programs just keep operating and running on their own. We're like little computer brains. And it'll just keep running. Oh, la la la. And who knows where that came from? Like third grade playground? I don't know.
Exactly. Sure.
Wait a minute. Who said that? Do I really believe this? I think regardless of where something came from, it's always good to kind of check in with yourself. And is this really what I believe?
In the book, I want you to define, now we talked about Tantra, we talked about being multi-orgasmic. Now, some would ask, is masturbation a part of this, or is there a different, is there a differentiation between masturbation and using this energy work and doing the energy work, even though you're having an orgasm, full body orgasm, or perhaps multiple orgasms? Is this categorized as masturbation, or where does that fit in, especially if you're talking about Tantra, which is, of course, in a sacred relationship in a couple? Right.
And most of these practices, I do detail some, obviously, for partners, but most of these practices can be done by yourself. And I really, really invite readers, everyone, to self-pleasure. It is so informative. You need to know your own body, or you're not going to be experiencing the pleasure that you deserve to have with a partner. Because if you can't express what you like, then they're not going to know how to give it to you. You know, everybody's wired differently. So what worked with the ex is probably not going to work with the new person. You know what I mean? So being able to know your own body and know what you like, and that can change over time. It's ever evolving, right? And we can learn new spots on our body. Oh, I didn't know that brought me pleasure. Being able to express that's going to make you a better lover, and it's going to give you a lot greater satisfaction in the bedroom. So that's an important tool. But and I'm just quick follow-up.
Sure.
The masturbation versus just using breath and energy work, both will give you whole body orgasms. I absolutely can just breathe it through and just bring that energy up through my spine and have rolling huge orgasms through my body without touching myself. Orgasms feel differently when they're derived from a different thing. So does that make sense?
Sure.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
There are different types of orgasms, and of course, depending, since it's a release of energy and buildup of like tension, they're going to feel differently at different times anyway. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right. So here's the thing. How can, and you know, I know uh, you are an amazing coach. How can people experience this with a teacher? If they, you know, they get the book, they look at this and they say, this is great, but I'm sure there are people, women and men, that would want to learn from someone and perhaps be a little bit more demonstrative in the breathing techniques and how to use that prana, how to bring that chi up, and how to create the orgasm. Is this something that you do?
It is. I do work with people one-on-one here in Los Angeles a little bit. I am working on a video series that will be up on my website, antoniahall.com, so that people can watch videos and have one-on-one time with me at their leisure from anywhere in the world.
Fantastic. So you're going to have like a virtual coaching practice, so people literally all over the globe can chime in, tune in with you, and you can walk them through step by step these various different processes.
Absolutely.
Now, in the book, you also have affirmations. I really love this book. You have affirmations at the end of chapters, and and a lot of the folk that you have the affirmations on, but I'm like, oh, I love that. Yeah, I know her. Yeah, Shakti, the visualization guru. Yeah, she's great. How did the affirmations come about?
It was implementation. I feel like, and the book is broken up so that it's just a couple of pages, an exercise and an affirmation to help ground it in, because the messages that we tell ourselves are so, so important. And so by having something that's tangent to carry with you throughout the day, it helps remind you, am I implementing this? And it helps rewire that brain of like, right, I do deserve an amazing, juicy, fulfilling life. And you do. Everybody does.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So I feel like affirmations are an important way to kind of anchor that in.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Love that. Now, you also believe in yoga, and why is yoga so important to you? Well, I know, because you can't. I don't even know how you can do yoga sometimes, because it's such an amazing chi practice and energy practice. But for those who can't make the correlation, go ahead, make the correlation between doing yoga and doing these exercises, and how both complement a multi-orgasmic lifestyle.
So yoga asks you to get present with your body. And again, most of Tantra does ask you to get present in the moment and where you can derive pleasure. But getting in touch with your body at that level is something that carries through every area of your life. It's like a moving meditation with your body. And the body wants movement. We're made for movement. So we should be getting some form of cardio and then some form of stretching. So the yoga gives you that, and the more that you're able to stretch and expand, I feel like that also carries over into your life, that you're willing to stretch and expand. And the more that we're willing to get out of our comfort zones, the bigger and more amazing our lives can be.
Very well said. Some people also, I had one of my favorite people in the world, Ladia Del Riviero, was on the show. And she's a professional bodybuilder, and just recently turned 50, and she's absolutely fabulous and phenomenal. And she's also into the fetish lifestyle. And so I was wondering, how can, for those people who, because you're now beginning to see it in movies and media and all of this, and it's become a word that is now part of the public domain. How does fetish work, lifestyles fit into living a multi-orgasmic life?
Nothing is off bounds with Tantra. It says that if it brings you pleasure, and of course both people are totally happy and feel really good about what they're doing, then there shouldn't be restriction there. And there are a lot of things that are considered fetish, but like, to me, it makes sense that if you're going to play with someone, then sense play is going to be something that's going to really increase that moment by moment pleasure point.
Mm-hmm.
And so it just brings that awareness of pleasure at this really deep, incredible level. Play. We're meant to play and have fun. I feel like there are an infinite number of ways to play with partners. You could keep playing. People get very rote about sexuality, but really you could keep playing and exploring different things with your partner for the rest of both of your lives, and find new things.
Lastly, as we're closing down, you also have a chapter in here and talk about toys and lubricants. This is why I love this book, ladies. And she goes there. She goes all in. There's nothing left out. So that's why I'm asking you some of the questions. So people are like, well, heck, I need to really read this. I need to know everything about this. And you've got orgasms for him, orgasms for her. Talk to us about toys and lubricants and why that is significant in this work.
Again, why would you restrict your pleasure? It's something that is pleasurable and fun for both people. And the more that you have to work with, the more you're going to find these new, incredible, juicy, fun play areas for yourselves. And so I think that people can sometimes think that there's something wrong if lube or toys are needed. They're both amazing. They're so much fun, and it will allow you, both single and with a partner, to have a lot more fun and a lot more pleasure in your lives. And that's part of being human, and you should be able to express that.
It's enhancement and augmentation. So yeah, absolutely. Now, what I like about this work is, again, this is work that you can take into your day. Most times we look at this as an isolated event that turns into a sexual event, but it's much bigger than that and much more than that. Because this is something that after you take it into your day, now we're talking about taking it into your life and becoming a part of your life. It's like exercise, and brushing your teeth is something that you are always able to tap into and you always have. Mm-hmm. Is that right?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just very empowering. It will fuel your work. It will fuel that creative drive. It helps. The more that we are fulfilled from our own selves, the more that we are not like coming from this needy place with others in our lives. And the more you start to surrender and trust, and you're finding those pleasure in every experience with people. Like, how can this be something that is beneficial to both of us? And when you're coming from that place, it's an incredibly powerful place to be.
Fantastic. Antonia, how can people get in contact with you? We talked about your coaching and your mentorship. What's the best way for people to reach out to you?
Through my website, antoniahall.com. I'm on all the social media. You can find me on Twitter and Snapchat, and I do sex tips on Snapchat. Along with
nice. We got to subscribe to that. Okay, that'll be great. Fantastic. All right. Do me a favor, Antonia, because I really love this topic. Can you come back on the show?
I would love that. Thank you so much.
All right. I would love to have another conversation with you about this and get deeper into the work and talk about the gods and goddesses and the gods and goddess in both of us and all of us. I think this is fantastic, tapping into the divine feminine, divine masculine, all that wonderful stuff. So that being said, thank you for being with me and sharing this wonderful information. And thank you for writing this book. We all need it.
Thank you so much.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is Philippe Matthews, and we are After Hours. Thank you guys for tuning in wherever you are around the world. We'll see you next time.